Schwarz and I'm the General Manager of the hotel. We're pleased to welcome you here today to our annual report meeting where we'll discuss the performance of the last year. Please allow me to take this opportunity to introduce you to our property. Restore yourself at the city center of culture and heritage. This is Hotel Ayla. Allow me to introduce you to our facilities. Hotel Ayla is conveniently located at the heart of Lausanne, directly by Lake Geneva. This 4-star hotel offers 250 rooms, 200 standard and 50 premium rooms. The restaurant facilities are equipped for 125 guests and offer space for 50 guests at the bar. The conference space accommodates up to 200 persons and the hotel's amenities include free parking, guest laundry, room service, and many more. Looking at our competitors, there are 6 other hotels who are competing for our direct market share. All have not been able to complete any refurbishments since their opening and offer similar services to us. Our aim is to rise above the competitive set, and we will do so by offering affordable room rates and thus proportionally increase our occupancy to reach our target RGI. Our positioning strategy is that we're targeting mainly business travelers, leisure travelers, and groups, both large and small. We focus on targeting transients, guaranteed, and discount segments. In terms of our pricing strategy, we're following a perceived value pricing strategy. This places high value on customer preferences and how they perceive the value that we offer for the prices that they will pay for our services. We will continue to focus on revenue optimization, using the 2 levers of occupancy and revenue. Now, please allow me to introduce you to our hotel management team, comprised of Mr. Isla, the revenue manager of the hotel, Mr. Malmsten, the assistant to the revenue manager, Mrs. Lonjon, head of sales and marketing, as well as Mr. Lilius, our property manager. They will now guide you through the process and changes that Hotel Ayla has made since the beginning of the year.
Thank you very much, Louisa, for that. Here we can see the trend for the last years for the occupancy, ADR, and GOP, and they've all gone down. Whereas this year we have been able to increase all of them. We can see here on occupancy our historical and current data. The blue one is the current one for this year, and we managed to be over the last year, but following the same trend. For the occupancy throughout the year, we can see that we had a peak in May when we had our request for proposal. For our ADR, we can see that it follows the same trend as last year. However, we managed to have it higher than the last year. And the ADR, we can see that we had a downfall in May when we had a request for the proposal. And the KPIs over the year, we can see that the occupancy index and the ADR index follows opposite trends. And in the end, we managed to keep the occupancy index above the comp set. And here we can see on occupancy that we managed to be higher than the competition. However, on the average daily rate, we were lower than the competition, and therefore we had a lower RGI than the competition in the end. For Q1, the general economic condition is well below that of the 2 past years, although there is a high demand for corporate segments. In January, looking back at the last year's indicators where RGI was below competition and ARI was 1.02, we tried to improve these indicators or at least match them. We wanted to decrease rates during weekdays to attract groups and corporate, and we wanted to increase rates during weekends to achieve a higher ADR from transients. When we look at the analysis for January, we can see that the occupancy did not increase as we expected. By first, the occupancy leveled both weekdays and weekends. Moreover, we increased the hotel's ADR index and dropped occupancy index and RevPAR index. This was actually contrary of our strategy. In February, our aim was to reduce ADR to increase occupancy both for weekends and weekdays, maintaining the price just below the average. And when we look at the analysis, we actually achieved an increase in occupancy, and the decrease in rates resulted in a slight increase in occupancy, but not sufficient to increase the RGI. When we go to March, we can see that we decided to further increase our prices as occupancy didn't increase. This time we benchmarked our prices with the best performing competitor and slightly lowered our prices. This new strategy is working. The occupancy rose faster in weekdays and we were able to increase all the indexes. So if we look at the summary of Q1, we can see that when we compare with last year that our occupancy actually increased throughout the quarter, but our ADR index remained high. And we can see that we had a higher tendency to have more occupancy on weekdays than on weekends. And we can see that our market segments were quite evenly distributed. For Q2, we had a possible rate growth of 2 to 3%, and we had appearing demand from airline and increasing demand from tourists and contracted guests. In April, since our strategy in March did not really work out, we adjusted the prices for each price segment in April, especially to push groups and tours which would increase occupancy. When we analyze the month, we see that in this month we succeeded in attracting groups and discounted, and therefore the occupancy remained positive for both weekdays and weekends. Unfortunately, the proportional decrease of ADR index has resulted in a lower RDI, as occupancy did not increase as much as we wanted. In May, we had a request for proposal for the full month, from Monday to Thursdays, in total 16 workdays. This was for 175 rooms a day, which represents approximately 70% of the hotel's capacity. By accepting this RFP, we would displace 75 transients during 16 days at an average daily rate of 192, so the total revenue displaced will be 230,400, and this resulted in a lucid rate of 83. And this was actually accepted by the group. So this will increase the occupancy during the month, and especially during weekdays, and also improve our general revenue. When we look through the analysis, we see that due to the group, the occupancy during weekdays increased considerably, and during the weekends the occupancy increased slightly compared to last month. And in terms of the RDI index, we had a negative trend due to the allocation of the big group. In June was the month following the request for proposal, and therefore the main goal was to maintain the occupancy index above the competitive set. For that reason, the hotel's approach was to keep targeting groups both during weekdays and weekends while maintaining a high level of transients and guaranteed bookings. When we analyzed June, we can see that we had a foreseeable increase in ADR due to the last month's group, and our occupancy index was decreased due to departure of the group. And in this month, the RevPAR index is above the occupancy index, showing that the rates have more weight than occupancy still. And when we resume the quarter, we can see that we had a high occupancy during the request for proposal, taking down the ADR index. We can see that we had almost equal splits between weekday occupancy and weekend occupancy, something that we were striving for. And we can see that we had a huge increase in groups during May, but otherwise kept a quite even distribution between segments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mastef, and let me continue with the third quarter, where it was forecasted an increase of 20% in both legacy and discounted airlines, while occupancies in general were going to be above 65%. Starting with July, we lowered our rates by 2% respect to competition to all discounted segments to attract the airline one. The request for proposal was not accepted, as the group was requesting rates and facilities that we couldn't offer. By analyzing July, we see how the general occupancy has increased. Rates were below competition, what allowed us to achieve a higher occupancy, but in general, we weren't able to reach our RevPAR above 1. Looking towards August, we decreased the rates for groups and tours during weekdays and increased all segment rates during weekends. As we can see in the analysis of August, we see how the hotel was able to maintain its price just below the competition while having the RevPAR index and occupancy index above 1. If we move to September, the approach we took was the prices will slightly decrease, especially during weekdays, so we have more and more even occupancy during weekdays and weekends. And analyzing September, we have group as our biggest segment, above transient and discounted. We have to make sure that this is leveled up, as groups contribute to volume in terms of occupancy, but transients were in both higher ADR, resulting in higher RevPAR index. The total occupancy decreased from 78 to 71%, but finally we achieved a leveled occupancy in weekends and weekdays, the first time in the whole quarter. ADR index has decreased slightly too much, although it's still resulting in both occupancy and RevPAR index to be above 1. So this will be a resume for the quarter 3 indexes. As we can see, we saw ADR with occupancy. Then for performance during weekdays and weekends, we still remain on weekends quite higher, and the segments maintain with the same trend. For the fourth quarter, we projected occupancies of 60% during weekdays and 55% during weekends. Starting with October, we wanted to match prices with last year's October, and by predicting the high prices that our competitors were going to put, we wanted to gain higher occupancy. If we analyze in detail October, we observe that the occupancy increased with respect to September, that is positive, although weekends occupancy remained higher than weekdays. The prices were way too low, boosting the MPI, but proportionally not elevating our GI. So the approach for November was to increase all rates, but still remain prices slightly below competition. The decision resulted in a 10% occupancy decrease, and indices are closer to our goal, having an MPI and RGI above 1. For December, the last month of the year, we decreased rates in general, focusing more in tour and groups during the weekends. And the analysis of December will result in the weekdays occupancy remain lower than the weekends, positively RGI and MPI remaining above 100, and rates just below competition. Then we move to the performances index, which is completely a shadow from Q3, and as well our weekdays against weekends still remain higher on weekends, and the market segment remains constant as well.
Now concerning our marketing analysis. The first month of the year, as we only had last year's hotel performance, we tried to improve and match the indicators. As the demand per channel is expected to follow the same trend as last year, we adjusted the distribution of marketing expenses accordingly. However, we from the beginning of the year decided to set our marketing expenses to around 8 to 13% of the total revenue, which is significantly higher than the 6 to 8% average. By doing so, we aim to attract as many guests as possible and have a strong marketing presence. In addition to the 10,000 brand agreement that has been signed, in the beginning of the year we took the decision to invest in almost all the marketing services that were provided in order to collect as much customer data as possible. This would allow the Ayla hotel to be as visible as possible in the competitive set. The loyalty program has been implemented from the month of March. During the Q1, by distributing the majority of the marketing expenses to direct channel, it has been the highest contributing channel among all of the 5. As our goal is to attract transients in small groups, the direct channel is in fact the most suitable distribution channel. By spending less on OTAs and GDSs, we have been able to save a significant amount that would have been required for the transaction costs. However, by focusing on direct channel rather than OTAs and GDSs, we might have lost the opportunity of capturing potential guests that book through these channels. During the first semester, it has been indeed stated that Ayla Hotel was not providing enough information about its offers and was not as offensive as it could have been on the social media environment. In the following month, we therefore decided to increase significantly the expenses dedicated to OTAs and GDSs, while still increasing overall marketing expenses according to the revenue variations. Even if the highest contribution was made through direct reservations, the recent increase in OTAs and GDSs expenditure might have caused a billboard effect, making it easier for transients to access information. Following the high season, Ayla's hotel suffered from a decrease in sales. We still made the choice not to drastically decrease marketing expenses, which led to them representing up to 13% of the total revenue in November.
In order to accommodate the targeted business customers, initial investments in facilities and services satisfying that demand were made. In fact, 87% of the total investments made in facilities incurred during the first quarter. In terms of services, 5 new offerings were introduced during Q1, which stood for 37% of the total yearly service investments. The goal was to create superior value for our target clientele through differentiating our services and facilities. These decisions were based on the corporate offices moving into the area and the economic upswing increasing business and corporate demand. Also, it was a response to customers' value sensitivity, where an increase in services and facilities justified that market price. Going into the second quarter, the falling airline prices increased the hotel market demand. In order to appeal to the increasing leisure demand, new services and facilities were introduced. This was also intended to appeal to the longer staying customers who increased during this quarter. These decisions were also inspired by the upcoming summer months, where the market expected an increase in leisure demand. Contracted cleaning and services was a continuous process during the 2 quarters in order to provide the best business facilities. Following this logic, the soft goods redo of the front desk and the meeting rooms were done in the beginning of Q3. This gets us to the third quarter, which became one of refurbishments. A total of 43% of the total expenditures on refurbishments and renovations incurred during this quarter. 2 new services were introduced during this time and stood for as much as 63% of the year's service investments due to the expense of minibar. As a result of the increase in renovations and refurbishments in the market, maintaining our own facilities became crucial. The increase in the region's tourism promotional budget led us to invest further to accommodate longer staying customers and the growing leisure demand. Entering the last quarter, maintaining facilities was an ongoing trend in the market. This resulted in the continued refurbishments and the renovating of the environmental program. This in spite of the declining revenue in order to maintain the value-sensitive customer base. And by using an environmental angle, we sought out to appeal through an ethical perspective and therefore differentiate ourselves from the competition.
Thank you very much, team, for the overview of last year. And now we'll have a look at the recommendations that we have planned for the upcoming year. First of all, for the short-term recommendations, we'd like to level out the occupancy for the weekdays and weekends, and we will do so by analyzing the competition's prices. We'd also like to do earlier investments and refurbishments in order to remain competitive. And finally, we would like to focus on the advertising expenses, whereby we shift the focus to more OTA and GDSs from our distribution mix so that we can benefit from the billboard effect. For the long-term recommendations, we will continue with our strategy to have prices just below the competition, but occupancy proportionally higher in order to achieve high RGI compared to our competitors. We will do that to have more value for price, as well as targeted transients, groups, and focusing less on the discount segments. We'd also like to invest in a restaurant and a fitness center in order to attract more of our corporate clients. Finally, we would like to, for our advertising expenses, we would like to increase this proportionally to revenue, just like we have done so in the past, with up to 9 to 10%. Thank you very much.